Hi, my name is Gabby Barber, and I'm in my fourth year of cultural anthropology. This summer, I was granted a Pure Award and had the pleasure to conduct my research project centered on queer people in rural Alberta. I was supervised by Dr. Sabrina Parrish. Over the past few years, the government of Alberta has spent a lot of precious time worrying about 2S LGBTQ people. In 2019, Jason Kenney introduced rollbacks of protections for students in GSAs, and in early 2024, Danielle Smith proposed harmful anti-trans policies, in part restricting access to gender-affirming care. While pride organizations and advocacy groups in Edmonton and Calgary have worked hard to defend queer people in their respective cities, queer communities elsewhere in Alberta have been overlooked. This research project intends to help advocate for queer rural folks by highlighting their stories and experiences and bringing them to the forefront of the conversation on queer people in Alberta. I went into the summer with three primary objectives: to understand experiences of queer people living in rural Alberta, to dispel reductive stereotypes, and to give voice to underrepresented rural residents. Over the course of the summer, I conducted 11 oral history interviews. The questions centered primarily on growing up as a queer person in small-town Alberta, how they create and experience community where they live, and what differences they perceive between rural and urban experiences. I also asked a couple of questions related to the current political moment in Alberta regarding the aforementioned anti-trans policies. I also attended several Pride events in Central Alberta where I was interested in observing social and support networks in rural areas, participation and attendance of the events, and how the Pride societies that organized the events presented queer experiences to the broader public. My supervisor and I also met with the Lacombe and Ponoka Pride societies in order to properly gauge how we could effectively work together and how we can use the research in a way that would aid them in advocating for their respective communities. There were several themes that stood out to me during this early phase of analyzing my data. I was incorrect in a lot of my assumptions, particularly ones that dominate the narrative surrounding queer people in rural areas, such as an all-around lack of support and hatred from and of their communities. While true in some cases, it's unfair to paint all rural queer experiences with the same brush. There's huge diversity both in how people are raised and how overt they are with their queer identities in rural spaces, and these experiences are not easily categorized. Queer people enjoy living in small-town Alberta and particularly value their supportive, close-knit communities and their easy access to nature. There is a difference across generations of rural queer people in terms of how they use the internet. Older people were counted using it to connect with other queer people. In comparison, younger folks more often used it as a tool to find and access information. In terms of hate in rural areas, some believe there is a way to combat that hate towards queer people through community efforts. Every person I interviewed is extremely concerned about the government of Alberta's proposed policies and do not feel properly represented by their elected officials. They feel that their government's actions could further fuel anti-2S LGBTQ+ vitriol and violence. Additionally, all participants expressed a desire to correct misguided ideas about queer life in rural Alberta. I also had a chance to make a zine with the Lacombe Pride Society that summarized their short but effective history, with the intention that it would encourage people to support rural pride organizations. They very kindly gave me the chance to talk about my research and hand out the zines at their Pride in the Park. Right now, we're working on an online survey that will be distributed this fall. The intention is that it will be an annual survey asking about demographics with some rotating questions regarding current events. The data will be used to help pride organizations better understand and serve their communities. If you're further interested in my research, all of the information I shared and more is housed on my website, www.quiraproject.ca. Thanks for watching!